There's a new study that links carbon dioxide with climate change. This time it's more confirmation on how human activities and the release of greenhouse gases are contributing to climate change, to the warming climate. Now, this study was published last week in the online edition of the journal Nature, and basically what it did is that they looked at carbon dioxide. They looked at greenhouse gases in two different places. Now, they looked at it in Oklahoma and Alaska, and they took measurements over the last 11 years in those two areas. They looked at it between 2000 and 2010 from, like I said, these two different locations, Oklahoma and the North Slope of Alaska. And they used a lot of highly specialized instruments in order to measure something called thermal infrared energy fluctuations, and then to analyze that. And what they were looking for is a phenomenon known as radiative forcing. Now, like I said, the study basically says that the planet is running a surplus of energy at the surface. And what that means and what that really does is that it apparently causes air and ocean temperatures to increase. And in this study, it shows that that increase is tied to mostly negative impacts. Now, in the science world, this isn't something that isn't already known. We knew, or scientists knew, that there was a surplus of energy. But they really didn't have the kind of precise measurements that they really needed. And so this research provides more observational evidence that the increased heating of the atmosphere during this period was due in a large part to the increase of carbon dioxide concentrations at the time. Now, the study also found that the 22 parts per million increase in carbon dioxide during this period caused the amount of energy absorbed at the Earth's surface to increase by 0.2 of a watt per square meter per decade. So here we are, we have more energy on the land surface, and that is caused by the greenhouse effect. And we know the greenhouse effect is basically what happens when the sun, the energy from the sun, when it comes through the earth and it goes through the atmosphere and it bounces back. When you have too many greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the rest of that energy doesn't escape. It goes and bounces back, and it warms the earth and the land, basically land and water. It's a bit complicated, and I can admit that I don't completely understand the science behind this whole thing. But when you put it simply in simple terms, it makes a little bit more sense. You have too much carbon dioxide, too many greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane. I think carbon monoxide, I think, is also considered a greenhouse gas. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have too many of those gases, that energy is not going to escape. It's going to bounce back. It's going to warm the earth. We're going to have climate change, increases in extreme weather, and warming of waters. Basically, it's not going to be a good situation when that happens. And that carbon dioxide, what this study shows is that carbon dioxide is directly linked to this energy surplus on land, of all of that energy being absorbed by the land and the water and warming it. Now, there was a scientist or a climate researcher at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado. Now, he was not involved in this, but this guy by the name of Kevin Trenberth basically puts it simply, this validates what we had already assumed. We knew, or we assumed, that greenhouse gases, that carbon dioxide especially, the fact that we've been emitting so much carbon dioxide, we've actually emitted, I should say that the global average right now of carbon dioxide is 400, pretty close to 400 parts per million. Now, according to some of the data, at the start of the Industrial Revolution, the carbon dioxide concentrations were about 280 parts per million. So we added a lot in just a short amount of time. It's actually higher than they have been throughout the entirety of human history. And to say that we haven't added to that our emissions have been negligible on that is ridiculous. Of course we have added to that, and we can see the fact that the Earth has been warming due to all this observational data. And what he said, Kevin Trenberth, he said, it is good to have validation. Now, it is good to have validation, but how much more validation do we need before we actually start to do something about it? And that's the thing. Studies like this are good because you can go and point it out to the people who think that the science is muddled, that they think that, it's not exactly settled, and go, look, here's what we suspected. Here's what the observational data says. The observational data says that we have had a lot of warming over this set period of time, and it's caused by this. There is correlation and there is causation, and now we need to plan to do something about it. It's really no longer a question whether or not carbon dioxide, the amount of CO2 that we're putting in the atmosphere right now, is having an effect on the climate. It is. There's no longer a question. The science is no longer muddled. And even conservatives are starting to come around to that idea and go, hey, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe that is happening. And now the question is, what can we do about it? And that's a different political debate that we're having right now. But when it comes to science, it's mostly settled. Like, we know what's going on now. Now we have to actually pull our heads out of our asses and do something. And of course, when it comes to people that are lobbied by big oil, those are the ones who are not going to believe studies like this. But for everybody else, even conservatives, now the question is, okay, how can we do this without blowing up the economy? And there are many different avenues that we can look into. Alternative energy sources, completely different conversation. However, those are the results of the study. Whether we like it or not, carbon dioxide has been shown to have has been observed to directly influence the amount of energy the land and the water are absorbing from the sun. The science is here. It's validated. Now on to the next discussion.